combination of work that you do, but also this artificial intelligence engine that you built to help identify stocks and trends. And I love it. Every time I hear a guest say, oh, I'm looking for high quality, I always think about you, because sometimes the machine picks just low quality stocks that end up doing really well. So you're not married always to high quality. Before we get into your picks, can we just talk about the rally, the resurgence that we've seen in the NASDAQ, and whether you think, you've been on, time and time again saying this could just be the beginning for the NASDAQ.
Yeah, well, I think last Tuesday with the CPI reading in the U.S. and then, yesterday the CPI in Canada kind of really shows that central banks, especially the Fed, are on the sidelines. And I think that has erupted a rally that I think is going to be what we'll look back on as sort of really the starting point of something significant. I think, this year has been great if you look at the index returns, especially for the NASDAQ, but it's, once you subtract out the Magnificent Seven from that, it's really been kind of a ho-hum or even a lousy year for most stocks. So we haven't got that breadth. That changed on last Tuesday, and the Russell, the small cap index in the U.S. was up 6% on the day, pushing it into kind of positive territory for the year. And I think there's been follow through since then. So I think it's a good thing if we see the Russell participate, if we see the breadth widen to beyond the Magnificent Seven. I think that's now happened with this cooling off of the CPI and the signal that the Fed's going to be on the sidelines. And I think that's going to be the beginning. We don't have to wait for the cuts for the rally to happen. I think the rally starts now.
Okay, so let's get into your picks. This one, the first one, Palantir, is not really scooping up. Well, on a low this year, it's up 200%, but off of where it was a few years ago. When did the buy sort of trigger here for Palantir? Do you think it can continue to go higher even with its huge run?
Yeah, it's been in and out of this name this year, and so most recently it was triggered a few weeks back. I think the question that I often get from folks is, well, besides Nvidia, what other stock should I own for AI exposure? And it's really tough. There aren't very many good pure plays that are as exposed to the trend as much as Nvidia is. But Palantir is definitely the one that I think of next after Nvidia. Now it's in a more professional services context. It has more of a government focus, but they are going after building these AI applications, to help protect us and keep the bad guys out of Canada and the US and so forth. So their revenue growth is not like a pure play kind of software margin company, but they are seeing kind of significant uptake in the use of their applications and the use of their services. So that's one where I still think we're in the early stages, even though they've had this 200% rally this year. It was off of kind of getting tossed in at the end of 2022.
Speaking of bad guys, Coinbase is your second pick, and its competitors are just sort of wilting here, whether it's FTX or now most recently CZ at Binance, pleading guilty to criminal charges and leaving Binance's CEO. Where does this leave a Coinbase, which has popped recently with Bitcoin moving up?
Well, the crypto market is kind of similar to the NASDAQ in the sense that Bitcoin and to a lesser extent Ethereum have had great years this year. But all those alt crypto coins that we used to hear about in 2021 have still had pretty lousy 2023s after a disastrous 2022s when many of them were down like 80 to 95% in some cases. And what's interesting about Coinbase is that obviously they make more money when people are excited about crypto, but especially when they start trading in these altcoins. If you look at their ARPU a couple of years ago versus today, it's way down. And so this year, what's changed from a year ago or 2 years ago is obviously with the Binance news, Bittrex going out of business, Kraken pulling out of countries like Canada. Coinbase's market share has obviously grown. And in the last couple of weeks, there has been an interesting stealth rally in some interesting altcoins like Solana and Avalanche and so forth. And so if this is a trend that's going to stick, and you're going to start to see this sort of broadening out, just like I talked about with the small caps, to some of these other altcoins, that's when Coinbase makes a lot of money, and they made a ton of profits in 2021. I think people think of it as sort of some like crypto is crazy, fly by night, but they were banking serious profits back in 2020 and 2021. So if that trend can continue just a little, it doesn't have to go back to the 2021 craziness. Coinbase can really surprise with profitability, and I think their shares still have a lot of room to move to the upside.
Well, let's talk about your last one, Affirm. Another one of these companies done well this year, but still a shell of what it was during the pandemic. So there's a gap there. Maybe it can catch up. Maybe it can re-rate a little bit. How do you think about this one?
Well, it's buy now, pay later. And so when you think about any company that's sort of exposed to interest rates, you would have thought that their last quarter would probably be the worst on record in terms of like when we had all these fears, the 10 years going to 5% and beyond and all this kind of stuff. How can a company that's in that business make money and so forth? And yet, they did, and they grew in their last quarter, which they announced a couple of weeks ago, 37%, the top line. And a lot of tech companies have really struggled to show, significant 20+% revenue growth. Many are just sort of bumping along. So if you believe that interest rates are now on the decline, that is going to benefit the Affirms of the world. They have got a really close partnership with Shopify, which I also own and like. And they had an investor day last week where they sort of talked up their partnership and how they're going to work together to broaden Affirm internationally. So it might not be going back to $150, $160 like it was, a year or two ago, anytime soon. But, at 25, where it is now, it still has ample room to the upside here.
All right.